sports report. Now we're talking about a peaceful presidential election, which is very key. Of course, this will be happening in the next 2 months. And not only will bolster efforts to promote economic growth, human development and security in Kenya, but throughout East Africa. Already, there is an air of optimism among investors in the country and in the region as well. They're saying that this will be very peaceful and they're very bullish about it. The results of the election in Kenya is important as it is the gateway to the landlocked East African states. The fact that investors are confident that elections in Kenya will be largely peaceful is positive news for the country. This is what we're discussing with our panelists here this morning. We drill deeper. Of course, the Kenya Chamber of Commerce and Industry last week was holding, a conference with the independents and some of the political parties, trying to see what is there in their manifesto as far as the business community is concerned, and also peaceful elections here. We are holding court still with Barrack Muluka, who's a political analyst. Also, we have with us Elisha Ongoya, who is a senior law lecturer at Kabarak University. And also joining us this morning as well is Rose Osoro. She's a former Commissioner of Revenue Allocation. Thank you very much. Right, let's drill deeper into the politics of the day as far as politics and business is concerned. And it's a pity that we don't have also the Vice Chair of Kenya National Chambers of Commerce and Industry with us. He's just feeling poorly this morning, can't make it. So we'll continue nonetheless with the discussion. But as it is right now, I've just read my intro and we're saying that yes, the business community is very bullish. They are saying this will be a peaceful election compared to the previous elections that we've had so far. So, and this is a good gesture also to the East African community as well. Barrack, what are your thoughts?
I think there's a difference between wishful thinking and the reality. Obviously, the business community, like all other citizens, would like to have a free, fair, and peaceful election. But if you look at the vibes as we are seeing things unfold this far, the tensions are building. I don't want to be pessimistic or to look like I'm raising unnecessary alarms, but you can see the tempo is not good at all.
Yes.
The things that people are saying on political rostrums, the manner in which they are articulating those issues, screaming at each other, raising their voices when they should be raising their logic. I think that gives us a cause for worry and concern, and we should refrain from flattering ourselves with the belief that everything is moving on a smooth plane. We have seen the bombshell that was dropped yesterday. It is something that we cannot run away from. We must get to the bottom of this matter and reassure ourselves that all is well. Because if we don't search the recipes for disaster in electoral processes, we must agree, tell ourselves that they are bad signs and we cannot ignore those signs. We must address them with the necessary attention that they deserve. Otherwise, to say that oh, the elections are going to be peaceful, how do you know? What kind of crystal ball are you using? What yardstick are you using to say that the elections are going to be peaceful? Yes, we want to have peaceful elections and we must work towards peaceful elections, and all concerned parties, political parties, candidates, the electoral authority, the secretariats of the candidates must behave responsibly and in a manner that shows that there's integrity and that we are moving towards a free and fair election. Very simply summarized, yes. If we do not have elections that are not only free and fair, but are seen to be free and fair, because perceptions are very important, then we cannot guarantee that there's going to be peace. And that's why questions like what we are seeing on the front page of the dailies about the printing of the ballot papers are not things that you can wish away lightly and tell somebody to grow up and tell someone that you are sensing defeat. No, These are things which must be addressed squarely. And the IBC, the State House, and other authorities owe it to the country that they must prove that these people are making outrageous allegations. Right. You don't just dismiss and say that forget about them, we are moving on. Who is Raphael Tuju? Where does he have the authority to start saying that the elections will go on? Does he speak for the IBC?
Mm-hmm. All right, so you think this is, so you hold with this view that this is wishful thinking, you know, the peaceful talk or the peaceful vibe that is coming from the business community?
I must be sympathetic to the business community because environment is everything for a businessman or businesswoman.
Yes.
I mean, in the absence of a conducive environment, then the businessman or businesswoman's core in delivery of his calling or his contribution to society is compromised substantially.
Yes.
Number two, it must be everyone's desire that we have a free, fair, credible, and peaceful election. Mm-hmm. The idea of elections is an idea that we borrowed from other societies. If you look at events in those societies, they conduct elections every day. You saw the UK the other day. The elections can be very disappointing sometimes, but there is no threat of instability in that country. Americans had a very hardly fought elections the other day, came with disappointments and laughter from the other side, but there was no threat of instability. People walk away with an element of bitterness, yes, because loss by its nature is not a good thing. I mean, even if you failed an elementary kindergarten examination, you walk away feeling somehow beaten. It's not a good feeling, but you don't go away clobbering your teachers and classmates who beat you in that election. But I understand where Mr. Muluka is coming from. The teachers who administered that kindergarten examination leave it to no doubt that the examinations have been administered in accordance with the rules, regulation, and traditions of examinations. And then as you walk away feeling bitter, you will know that next time I'll work harder, next time I'll study slightly harder. It's that context that the peace that we all crave for these elections deserve to be matched by the credibility of the electoral process itself. The elections must be optimally conducted in accordance with the principles, the provisions, and the traditions of the laws governing credible elections to make anyone who may feel dissatisfied, entertain the pain that ordinarily attends to loss by its very nature, but without a feeling that a rag has been pulled beneath my feet. That can be the only guarantee for a free, fair, and credible election. Looking at the response that I saw in today's media from the Secretary General of Jubilee Party, and see, Debarl, it must go down on record from my mouth that there's something very unpleasant about a partisan political party responding for an independent commission. Even where a claim was baseless, it comes across as confirmed. Because if I make an allegation against the IBC has structures, a communications person, the commission itself, legal officer, it has an entire body of structures. But if you find the other side of the political divide responding for the IBC, to the man and woman at Wakulima Market, what message does it send across? It is those kind of messages saying that for the sake of the peace that the business community rightly, in my view, craves for, should not be sent out. That the message must be different. It must come from the responsible commission. The IBC is an independent commission. It's a responsible commission. It must justify, as I said earlier, whatever it does. Being a commission which by principle is expected to be transparent and accountable, it must come out and account whenever questions are raised. We have so far not seen a very clear account of the IEBC on this question. Maybe like any other accountant, it is preparing the books that will present at a later date. But I think in terms of the electoral environment, the sooner those books are read so the atmosphere is not polluted or contaminated, the better it is. If I have to render any free advice to the IEBC, they must have a clear, credible response mechanism to these kind of allegations to avoid contaminating the atmosphere in the interest of the wish expressed by the business community, which is a wish that we should all share, that these elections must be free, fair, credible, and peaceful in the greater interest of the country that is Kenya.
Thank you. And of course, we are eagerly awaiting, because we understand IBC also has created first time with the presidential candidates at 10 a.m. this morning. So we hope that this matter also will be equally thrashed out with the presidential candidates. Let's hear from Rose Osoro, looking at the business's environment as projected by the business community, that yes, this is bound to be a very peaceful election. You agree with this particular sentiment?
I totally agree that it's going to be a peaceful election, for the simple reason that it's us to decide whether it's going to be peaceful or not peaceful. And when I say us, I'm referring to every single Kenyan in this nation, starting from me as an individual to the institutions that we are talking about.
Yes.
If we really desire for peaceful elections, we are going to have them. We have to be extremely responsible for everything that we do. As a voter, I must be ready and willing to vote in my candidates. As an institution that is conducting this election, we must be seen to be independent. Totally and completely. The word we need to underline there is independent. And if you go back to our constitution, where does this independence come from? It comes from parliament, it comes from the independent institutions actually ranked number 4. So if that is what as Kenyans we have decided, and we have given the commission the power to be independent on our behalf, we want it to be seen that really they must be independent as it was. Peacefulness, that is what we pray for, that is what we are looking forward to, and we must work around that peace. We must be given the confidence. I hear Kenyans all the time saying, Kenyans, be peaceful, don't kill each other. But why is it that we kill each other? What is bottom line? Why is it that we feel that we are not really getting what we ought to get? The institutions must be very, very responsible. All institutions that are in this process, starting from even the anti-corruption one, the police and everybody else who is working, you must be seen to be independent so that we can be able to hold the peaceful election that we are looking forward to.
All right, thank you. And I want to just draw your attention to page 2 of yesterday's Daily Nation, which is talking about the crises also in the counties. And this is what we've been waiting eagerly to know what will be the settlement. Today is the final day, of course, where we'll see the National Assembly and also the Senate going for a recess. And it says that counties now are risking or are at risk of a cash crunch after the August 8th general election. Senate yesterday rejected the second division of Revenue Bill 2017. And senators accused the National Assembly of using the constraints of time to blackmail them into approving little funds to the devolved units. On the afternoon characterized by unity often seen during the debate on the bill, senators admonished MPs and vowed not to cede ground until the proposal is factored into the bill. And of course, we know what has been happening with the Division of Revenue Bill and the Appropriation Act as well. There is a crunch now in the counties as far as nurses are concerned. They cannot be paid their monies. And of course, the governors have been crying foul that there is no money at all to actually make operations in the county run successfully and smoothly. Yes. Where are we at?
Allow me to correct some impression by my colleague, Madam Osoro, about the ranking of our institutions in terms of governance. Independent commissions and constitutional commissions and independent officers don't rank number 4 in the order of things because if you study the architecture and design of our constitution, it does not envisage verticality of institutions.
Yes.
It envisages a horizontal relationship between institutions where they all kowtow only to one thing, the constitution and the law. But that they exercise mutual respect, they exercise independence, they exercise consultations where necessary, but at the end of the day, they act independent of undue controls from other institutions. One thing that I have found very interesting about the men and women we put in office to then run these institutions, particularly the various houses of parliament, is the ego question. Where for a long time there was a debate as to who is superior between the National Assembly and the Senate. Yes. And one day while teaching at the university, I told myself that question is so naive. It's like a debate we used to have in kindergarten, or who is better between the teacher and the doctor. What are you comparing between the two? They discharge different functions. So what is it? To say something is better, they must bring the same thing, and therefore you have points of comparison. But that was then for academic purposes only. As we speak now, I think right from the year 2013, where the Speaker of the Senate had to take his counterpart in the National Assembly to the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion on revenue allocation, the behavior between these two houses has been anything but disciplined, has been anything but acting in good faith. There is always a temptation to twist another to prove supremacy. Now, administratively, today is supposed to be the last day of the sitting of the Houses of Parliament, but let's not forget that that is purely out of convenience to allow people to go out and campaign. Otherwise, officially, Article 102 of the Constitution decrees that the term of each House of Parliament expires on the date of the next general election, meaning nothing stops any of these houses from passing a motion to defer the date when they go on recess for purposes of attending to their respective campaign, even if nothing stops the speakers from recalling them for purposes of attending to a matter of national importance like this one here. Starving counties of funds at this critical juncture would at best be irresponsible, at best. If you study the design of our Constitution again, it envisages that matters affecting counties would by and large be dealt with by both Houses of Parliament through consensus. The Constitution envisages that being institutions run by men and women, there are bound to be disagreements. That is normal. People are bound to disagree on one thing or the other, but it inbuilt mechanisms where consensus can be built. And when that consensus is built, then we can move forward. Allow me to say this to our viewers, Debarl. You cannot build a constitutional culture where men and women are practically unreasonable. There is always an underlying presumption by the makers of the Constitution that it is going to be implemented by fairly practically reasonable men and women. So that in a practical context, you always work on a give and take situation. You can't say mine is 13 shillings. And if you talk about 13 shillings and 50 cents, mutu atakufa hapa. That is a bad spirit. The spirit is, what is it that we can reasonably agree on so that we move forward as a country in the spirit of consensus, which is what has been lacking. If you asked me, the real culprit here has been the National Assembly, largely with the support of the President also. The National Assembly has tended to bypass the Senate in doing some things, and when those bills go to the President, whereas he is empowered to raise constitutional questions and return them for consideration, to say, look, why have you brought me this bill that does not have the input of the Senate as required? He has signed it into law and moved on. I think it is critical that, to use the words of Rafael Tuju, we mature as a country so that we view this as not being our private enterprises. This is public office for heaven's sake. These are resources of the people of Kenya for heaven's sake. And if our leaders, for just one moment only, remember that fact, we would conduct ourselves slightly better than what we are now seeing facing the counties because of misbehavior, not on the part of the counties themselves, but of institutions that are supposed to facilitate the proper functioning of the counties and hold them to account.
And this particular stalemate right now is also giving fodder to maybe the governors, because we understand also most of the suppliers, for the longest time, they've not been really paid their monies because of some malaise in the system itself. Some of them, they raise accusatory fingers to the IfMIS, and some of them also are stashing away money in the banks. And now this is another excuse that will be trotted with the governors that, yes, there is a crunch right now, or there's a crisis right now, and now the crunch is we cannot get money to actually pay our suppliers, Barrack.
I think it's a cocktail of causative factors. One that, yes, there are governors who have failed to pay suppliers. And maybe not just governors, but functionaries within county government. We know for a fact that even the tenders are quite often issued on the basis of who knows who and of what interests that people have within the corridors of the county governments. We know for a fact that quite often people have got to pay in order to get those tenders. And it's also open knowledge that many times somebody comes running after some of that money in advance before you have even begun the job, that many times projects are stalled, they cannot go on because the contractors do not have the funds. The funds went back to the people who gave the tenders. These are things which this country must face.
Yes.
We must confront them, and we must deal with them. Then, of course, there's the question of the IfMIS, which sneaks in at night, almost like a night runner, and in the morning, it is gone. IfMIS behaves like a tap in a situation where there's a water shortage, and in the night, they will turn it on. And those who are awake and are able to go and tap will tap and get something. And sometimes some people have advanced knowledge that today the tap is going to be flowing, and so by the time you are getting there to try and get yours, you find that the supplier has closed again. And if I lie, we have Rose Osoro here, who has been a commissioner of an independent commission, and she can tell us how IfMIS works, whether it has facilitated these things or not. Then there are supremacy wars, which Ongoya talks about, and they began even before the Senate itself became effective. We remember that the functions of the Senate were suspended after the promulgation of the Constitution, pending the first elections. And even before the elections took place in 2013, there are people who are already saying, let us scrap the Senate, we don't need the Senate. And some of us saw in that a ploy against devolution, because the Senate exists primarily as the custodian of devolved government. Its role is to make sure that the counties are getting the resources that they require, that those resources are going to the tasks and assignments that they are expected to be addressing, and ensuring that there is complete compliance with expectations on matters of platforms of integrity and the principles and objectives of devolution. Now, when we get to a situation such as where we are, it is actually a demonstration of irresponsibility of the highest order on the part of the legislators that they are digging in. If you ask why are they digging in, what are the fundamentals that are making the National Assembly, for example, to say that we will cut this down to a lower figure, they cannot justify it. It's purely whimsical. And those kinds of whims are completely unnecessary. And I do hope that the voters out there are watching. Again, as Elisha said earlier on, you have got these flawed legislators who have made things difficult for selfish reasons. And when they come back to you, you vote for them. I think we need to be telling the citizen, and I do hope that they can dig in up to the end, so that this time round we show them the door, the entire lot of them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, let's hear from Rose.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me start with IfMIS, first of all. IfMIS is a system. It is not, it's not a cure, it's a system that we use. And I can state quite frankly that IfMIS is the system that we must have in government, because it traces every single coin that we have in government where it goes. Very, very critical. The problem comes in when we feel that there is one arm of government that has exclusive rights to the system, that they can be able to switch it off when probably there are issues that are not system-like, but issues that are outside the system, but still they allege that it's the system. For instance, if there is some kind of cash flow issues within government, the only thing that you can feel is that even county government are feeling that IfMIS isn't working. But the problem is not IfMIS. The problem is before IfMIS. That is the flow of funds.
Yes.
So if IfMIS has to work, then we must have a system that is intergovernmental in nature. in the management of IfMIS as a system, so that even county governments and everybody else feels that they understand what is going on in that system. And you give it some kind of independence that is way beyond the National Treasury. Because now what happens, National Treasury compounds the many problems that they have, the many issues that they need to deal with, and add IfMIS on top. So what we see out here is a system that is bad, but it's not really the system that is the issue. I'm telling you, that is the better devil that we better have.
I think we need to confront these things. The system itself is good as an idea, but we must go beyond feelings, because that's what the Commissioner is saying, we feel, and interrogate the reality. That has it, as the way it has worked this far, been efficient, or has it had challenges or problems? These things of muffling things and smothering over things, I think is part of our problem. If there are issues with the IfMIS, we should accept that there are issues with the IfMIS, and that IfMIS should be made to work.
So is it because the system in itself, as I say, it's not really bad? It's garbage in, garbage out. It's just a system, right? So are the people who are operating the system the people to actually raise accusatory fingers to?
You know, Debarl, this country must shock you that, as our mutual friend with Mr. Muluka, Professor Pierre Lumba always tells us, that is one of the beacons of hope in Africa. Particularly if you live around here. Some things happen here that are uniquely Kenyan, but sometimes very disappointing. Particularly if you're a proud Kenyan who wants some positive stories to work with out there, because the temptation of people out there to have fodder to counter any argument you have is readily available. It is not supplied by the enemies of this nation. This country has enemies within.
Yes.
IfMIS is an integrated financial management system. It means on one screen, you can see procurement, supply, payment systems on one screen. It's supposed to be a very transparent, accountable system. Number two, when you automate things, as a media house, you know this, the more you automate, the more efficient you become. The faster your products flow from the fields to a studio and to the market. In public circles, it's very strange. The pace at which suppliers are being paid, if you talk to any supplier, has been substantially slowed down, and the excuse being IfMIS. So that anytime you go to ask for your payment, you don't know, the problem is with IfMIS. This IfMIS has become a synonym for inefficiency in processing your payment. Equally, the mega character of financial scandals has become even more with IfMIS. A system that's supposed to give us a one-point reference that you can see a scandal at sight. Now, you hear even bigger scandals, some of which now in the public domain, people are admitting to having carried money from public coffers in sacks. The paradox is that one. The paradox is you have technology in place, but people are using the most manual way of now carrying away money in sacks. These things, when you leave this country to go out there, embarrass you when you want to talk positively about your country. The system is innocent. It's a system. By the way, it is a tested system. Kenya is not the first country to use it.
Yes.
It has worked. But you cannot make good deals with bad guys. The system is in the hands of bad guys. They will do everything to ensure that it's dysfunctional, either to collapse it completely and go back to a more surreptitious manual system, or just to create despondency, so that the situation is so bad that no one cares to question. You see, the easiest way to escape responsibility is just by creating a generally bad situation, so that things are so bad that you have no luxury of commenting on some of the ills you are seeing. I guess, speaking for myself, that that's the agenda of the bad guys behind the continued malfunction of this system, failure to pay suppliers. The other day in a forum that you and I were attending, we learned that government owes suppliers over 162 billion shillings. Now, that requires justification, as I said earlier. Somebody must be able to explain that we are broke. We have no money, actually. Or that we are investigating some major scandals. We are not paying these people because they are under a radar of investigation. We suspect these suppliers don't exist. And I would be happy myself if I'm told these are a subject of investigations, all these things. But no one is answering the question either way. It's just that we owe them. When shall we pay them? No one cares. My suspicion, particularly in counties, is It's just to accumulate the debt, let it well, then you leave office. Remember, governors have an unrenewable maximum 80-year tenure. I mean, 10-year tenure. You will leave, then somebody else will deal with that problem once you are away. Again, a question of attitude, a very bad attitude. If I was governor, and I trust I'll never be one in my living history, I would ensure that I pay off as many of my bills as possible by the time I leave office, because they represent my development agenda. It's the agenda I defined for my accounting. I have delivered, I'm showing infrastructure and matching it with the budget, and I have delivered. I hand a clean bill as far as possible to my successor so that he's also judged on his books. My worst fear, however, is that, particularly for governors who are leaving office, the new incoming governors will have nothing to run those offices for. Their entire equitable allocation will be consumed by existing debt. And that's a major scandal.
Major scandal. Right, we want to hear also what you have to say on USA, and Usha, she's standing by.
Right, so got a lot of feedback coming our way. Because of time, I'll only be able to read some, but remember the conversation does go on. AM Live and TV is how you can get us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. So starting with Samuel, who says, when you find that almost everybody in politics has issues related to corruption, you could take the devil you know as the alternative. We also have Kabaki, who says it's the business people who are funding some of these underhand dealings towards electoral rigging. We also have Mkenya Halisi, who says it's a shame that Jubilee has made responding for the IEBC their responsibility. All these factors can't be merely coincidental. We have Kennedy, who says, so is the IEBC Kenya really independent? Jubilee seems to be their spokesperson. Let them fight their own battle. So really just echoing the sentiments of the previous tweet. We have Kirimi, who says IEBC laying off key directors in ICT and procurement is a problematic matter and a telling one. Masharia says, what Jubilee offers, I only see on TV. Maize is 90 shillings on TV screens, no unga in supermarkets. Shall we eat the SGR? We also have Ali, who says, there is nowhere in the world that a bicameral parliament is at par. One must watch over the other and instill discipline. And finally, we have Amos, who says, Raphael Tuju is not the IEBC's spokesperson. Let the IEBC defend itself. So there was comments on a raft of issues, but it would seem that this, looking at the temperature today, it would seem that a lot of people seem to think that the IEBC should speak for itself and that the Jubilee party has no business commenting or defending them. Remember, we are streaming live on AM Live and TV, our Facebook page, so head on right down there. You do not have to miss the show anymore in case you're leaving the house. Back to you, Debarl.
Many thanks indeed, Usha there. Of course, the rush of tweets as well. Thank you for your sentiments. And we will also be getting to hear the closing comments as well as we drill deeper, just to look at, especially, I think it was on you, Rose, before we continue with the other discussion on what has been raised. I think some of the financiers of these elections are business people. But of course, they want maybe a particular regime to continue or the other regime to come in because of the business interest as well. Is it normal? Is it abnormal? Yeah, you tell us.
I agree totally that the business community also contributes to the confusion that we have in this nation. Mostly the business community is the one that goes in to get money without providing services. That is bottom line. So when it comes to a point of payment, then you can't pay. Some of the bills that they are putting forward cannot be paid as such. But then linking lack of payment in government to IfMIS does not add up. You pay what you have. IfMIS does not manufacture money. It's a process. It's a system that passes out money. If you don't have those funds, then you're not going to pay your suppliers. So essentially what is happening in county governments as we speak now is that county governments are actually borrowing through the back door. And this is how they borrow. They contract services. Services are done, but they know very well that they cannot be able to meet those obligations. So what they do, they keep pushing them over as pending bills, a nice term that has been coined in government called pending bills. They push it on to the next financial year, push it on to the next financial year. I can assure you now, as we stand now, if we are going to have county governments that will be having more debt than their equitable share. as we move on, as we are transitioning from the first governance to the second governance, it's going to happen. So I think as a country, we need to go back and look at the system that we have so that we can be able to hold each one of us accountable. The business community is not going to be forgiven for this. They're the people who invoice the county government. Somebody goes in, Googles a document and bills the county government 40 million. Of course, 20 million is going elsewhere, but the thing is, as a nation, as a person, as an who are you? Why are you doing this to our nation? That is what we need to, the values that we hold as a nation, what are these values? And then we go out and say, we have not been paid, we have not been paid. When you ask, what for? Nobody can tell you. Somebody is saying that the bills we have are 162 billion. And one person was asking, this 162 billion, if you put it in a village, what will happen to that village? Can't you see that money? Then why is it that we're not seeing that, whatever services that the business community has offered to the county government or whatever to government, why is it that we're not seeing those high scrapers in villages? Because 162 billion is a lot of money. You need to see it. What is this that they offered the county governments that we are not seeing as we speak? So it is a national kind of dialogue that we need to talk. Corruption is there, but it's not one side. It's not only in government, it's also in our business community, as it were. But as we stand now, what we need to do to rescue the situation is to quickly go in and see how much, in terms of pending bills that are outstanding, as we transition to the next government, so that we understand as a nation, this is County X, County 46, for instance. How much do they owe in terms of debt before we even go to the next government that is going to come in? So that as the new governor comes in, and I hope it's going to be not in Nairobi, not in county number 47, 46. Let me use county number 48 so that I'm not killed out here. Hoping that there's change of governorship, then it means me, the incoming governor, I'll be able to actually know my status as I come in. So that at the end of the day, this is our nation. That is what we are keeping saying. If we keep eating, and nothing, we have nothing showing for it, then it's us. It's us at the end of the day. So I think it's important.
All right, thank you. Let's hear closing remarks from Barrack Muluka, and also comment a bit about on paying on the preferred suppliers. You know, choosing to pay only preferred suppliers amongst the many suppliers that you have in the counties, especially. Very briefly,
yes, when we have preferred suppliers who are being paid, then most likely those suppliers are siphons. We are just using them to suck funds out of the public coffers. And I agree with Commissioner Rose that the business community sometimes is part of the problem. In fact, you are not necessarily talking about a business community. You are talking about cowboy contractors, mercenaries, and other wheeler dealers, whose role is to exploit the situation through cronyism, through all other manner of isms that bind the supplier with the person commissioning them. And their objective is basically to enrich themselves at our expense. If you look at county government, there's an extent to which it is devolution of corruption and devolution of some of the worst possible practices. If you look at the national government, we saw the other day somebody raised 1 billion shillings over a dinner that took just a few moments. Somebody else is also preparing to raise 1 billion shillings. We must ask President Kenyatta and ask Raila Odinga, these people who are raising 1 billion shillings for you, what are you going to give back to them? People don't just come to give you 1 billion shillings because they like you so much, they love you so much. What are their expectations? And Kenyans must be frank. We must refuse to look at these things and wish them away and say that this is Raila is our candidate, this is Uhuru Kenyatta is our candidate. This is where corruption begins.
Thank you. Elisha.
Just two observations. One, we, as a country, must have a very clear distinction between business people, which is a very positive term, and thieves. We confuse these two sometimes. Plain thieves pass across as business people. Number two, this generic term business people also amazes me. If I run a law firm, I'm a lawyer. I should call myself a lawyer. If you're a media practitioner, you're a media practitioner. You're a hotelier. You're in the transport sector. But there's some generic people who just describe themselves as business people. I find that very surreptitious. So they are basically wheeler-dealers, thieves. Number two, I think maybe a time has come we need to ask, do we possibly, in the run-up to this election, need to have yes, a candid national dialogue on our debt, our public debt, and at the various counties to have a public dialogue on county debt, so that the incumbent, since he's the one with the obligation to justify, tells me that if I'm in county X, we have a debt, we had a budgetary allocation of 10 billion, we have a debt of 2 billion. Those are 12 billion, these are the supplies. And finally, the question that Rose asked, why are we doing this to our nation, is a question I prescribe for every Kenyan, in every village and every hamlet.
Thank you. Very briefly, Rose, very briefly, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks is that this is a very delicate period for our country, and it calls for each one of us to stand where we are and do what is right. Starting, I associate with young people in this nation, and you can see the optimism in these young people. This is our nation. We need to protect it. And leaders come and go. And that is exactly what we're going to do. In August, we're going to have new leaders who 5 years down the line are going to leave. So what we stand for as a nation, we need to look for this peace, search for it on an individual level, be accountable yourself as an individual, as you hold other institutions accountable for peace for our nation.